We just got a massive patch this Halloween, dropping all kinds of news from crazy balance changes that are going to completely shift the meta, to a few adjustments to the spotlight caches, which was kind of negligible. But of course, I got to keep you covered with the datamined content. And oh my goodness, it delivered once again. I have so many cards to show you guys here today. And at the end of the video, I'm going to show you two schedules for both December. It's been updated and slightly adjusted, as well as January for all the card releases and the spotlight caches. So stay tuned for that. Now, I wanted to do this a lot sooner. I was at work when this was all happening, so we're gonna rip through these cards super quick. And let's start it off with SKAAR here. The January season pass card, a 611, costs 2 less for each of your cards that have 10 or more power. So when I look at this card, all I'm thinking, oh, by the way, you only got one variant. There's nothing rotating up top. We just got one. So when I look at this card, I'm thinking, it's a bit of a win more card, right? You kind of already have cards out there that have 10 power, and then this guy's going to, benefit from that, and then you can play it, and yeah, sure, that's great. But did we need it at that point? If we got multiple 10 power cards out there, we're probably fine. And if anything, we're just setting up our opponents for an amazing Shang-Chi play. Now, there's going to be a card that I'm going to talk about shortly that pairs quite well with SKAAR. But if we just look at active synergies that are in the game, you got Lockjaw cycles to get a bunch of 10 plus power cards out on the field, including SKAAR himself, which isn't too bad. But in that case, I might almost prefer a Hulk. You know what I'm saying? Then we also got Shuri that can double the power of another card, like a 5 power card, to bring it to 10, to also trigger and discount SKAAR. Or we can just double SKAAR, go to 22, and that's pretty good in its own right. So not a bad card by any means, but also just not that exciting. I put Typhoid there as a synergy because I think it's the earliest possible 10 power card without any buffs or other synergies that you can put on the field. There you go. That's what my first thoughts are with SKAAR. It is a season pass card, and you just can't sleep on these. I could see a world where you're playing, like, I don't know, all kinds of high power cards, cheating them out with Jubilee, Lockjaw, or whatever. This becomes a 211 or 011 maybe, and that's amazing. I just wonder if that's going to help you win the game, or if because you're already in that scenario where you're already winning and it didn't really matter if you got a 011 SKAAR. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. More time will tell. That'll be for January to decide. Let's move on to the next one. Next is CAIERA. Now I'm giving CAIERA also 3 stars. Watch out, that might be a trend with these January cards. But this is a pretty interesting one. So a 3/4 ongoing, your 1 and 6 cost cards can't be destroyed. Now, at first when I read this, I was like, I just don't know if I'm that excited about it. It seems like armor is just better because it can protect other things, and destroyer, synergies kind of. This kind of works with destroyer as well, but I'm thinking now it's pretty good. I'm leaning towards it now. Thank you to the Berryverse for sharing some synergies and also letting me know how to pronounce her name. But here we go. We got Kazar, right? So you can play all those 1-drops, not worry about it, because you got CAIERA out on the field to protect your 1-drops. That's amazing. You can also combo that with a Killmonger. Imagine that. You can actually play a zoo list with a bunch of 1-drops and Killmonger in the same list and make it work. That's pretty sick. I like that idea, but maybe that's not exactly where we want to go, but the options are present. Now, of course, what are you stopping? You're stopping opponent Killmongers, and you're stopping opponent Shang-Chi's, which is really ideal. That's some of the best cards since the dawn of time in Marvel Snap, the number 1 and 2 tech cards, I would say, in the game. So she's preventing those at a 3/4 stat line, which isn't too shabby. There is going to be instances where armor is better, but I like the option of having this, especially if we deck build around it. Another crazy synergy here is Arnim Zola. Have you ever had those games where you're playing like a Black Panther Arnim Zola combo, or just anything with Arnim Zola, even Null or anything like that, but then Central Park happens and squirrels end up everywhere or something along those lines, right? You didn't want them to be there. Maybe a hood got vipered over to your side of the board, anything like that. Well, you can use Arnim Zola wherever you have those 1-drops. They're going to be protected, and Arnim Zola should, in my eyes, focus on the card that he can destroy, which would just be whatever's remaining. I'm pretty sure that's how it would work. I don't think it would go can't destroy. We'd have to find out. Okay, asterisk maybe with that card. Again, I just got home from work. I've had barely any time to think about these, let alone put this stuff together. So it could, I don't, has anyone ever used Arnim Zola on Colossus? Probably not. What happens? I don't really know. It probably says can't be destroyed and then there's no copies, or maybe there are copies. Look, if there's a way that this can target a specific card at a location because it's being protected by CAIERA, then that's pretty sick. I think that's pretty fun. Is that probably the scenario? Probably not. We'll find out. Pretty neat card, interesting tech card. I still don't know how to feel about it. It's an up and down with me. It's getting 3 stars. Next up is Hercules, a 4/6. The first time another card moves here each turn, move it to another location. And look at that, 2 variants with this brand new card. This one I think is kind of being slept on, but it also could be really clunky. So I'm giving it, you guessed it, 3 stars. Sorry for the middling of the ratings here. I just genuinely think that this batch of cards isn't very overpowered and isn't underpowered. Has a spot in a certain deck, but at the same time could be scratched for something else. That's the vibe I'm getting so far from these cards, but we'll get to a few more others there. So 4/6, not too shabby, right? We could discount this with Sabu, which isn't too bad, but we're probably looking to use this in a move deck. And that's actually really sick if you think about it. You pull Ghost Spider, it pulls like a Vulture or Human Torch over. That's one set of movement. And then Hercules pushes it away for another hit of movement. That's amazing. You go from 2 to 4 with Torch to 8 in one fell swing. But is this a little bit too late game? You know, maybe we're looking to use Heimdall with this. It bounces one thing away back to the Heimdall location. That's not too shabby, but it is the first thing and is only once per turn. You got to watch out your movement. You got to look at the situation. I like it with Craven, right? Craven is, sometimes suffers from the location being filled up, so he doesn't get to those crazy power totals. That's why kind of Silk is nice, because it bounces around and makes it easier to go there and hop off. Well, Hercules is just shoving everything away. So you get the power from Craven, the buff, and then it's pushed away with Hercules so you can bring more stuff back. It's pretty fun. It's pretty interesting. I just worry that that high cost for move decks is a little bit too much. We've seen this with Spider-Man 2099. It's not a terrible card, but it's clunky and it gets cut for a lot of other things that ends up not being popular. So the same thing might happen here with Hercules, but I imagine some insane scenarios, some crazy power totals, and any time a card comes out that benefits from being moved around, you're going to see Hercules a lot. And by the way, big shout out to the Berryverse. We make a lot of custom cards, and there was somebody that made a slapstick card and a few others as well that were very similar to Hercules. So pretty cool to see those ideas actually join the game. Of course, they don't have any ties to Second Dinner or anything like that, but it's still cool to see. But yeah, there's Hercules, another 3-star card. Let's get to the next one. Next up is MIEK. I think that's how you pronounce it, or MIEK. MIEK? I think it's just MIEK. Never heard of this character ever. I've never even seen anyone make a custom card out of this character, but here we go. A 1/1 after each turn. If you discarded any cards, gain +1 power for each and move. Now, this is pretty interesting. At first, again, I kind of thought it was trash. And now I'm starting to like it a little bit more. But when we compare this card to Morbius, which is already out in the game, and that has been a staple in discard decks that essentially does this, but double the amount of power that you get for each card discarded, it makes you wonder if you're ever going to actually run MIEK. Now, we did have somebody in the Berryverse mention that this is kind of Second Dinner's way of putting a 1-drop in discard lists. They've already tried to do that with Blade, and it's good, but a lot of people still run Nebula or something early just to have a 1-drop to play. Well, MIEK might, solve that problem. Might be that card that you want to put in there. I could easily, dude, with one swipe of MODOK and like a 5-card hand, you're looking at a 1/6. That's amazing, right? There is downside though. You're moving around. You don't know where this card's going to land. That could be good if it's Sanctum Sanctorum, but then you got to make sure you don't discard anything after that. So does it become awkward? Think about when you play Dracula. That's going to discard something at the end of the game, which might move MIEK away from a winning position. A little bit awkward. Maybe anti-synergy, or maybe positive synergy because you filled up the location. You don't care where MIEK goes. I could see it going both ways, but it's an interesting card, no doubt. It does just get absolutely annihilated by Killmonger and Shadow King. So maybe you gotta be running CAIERA or something like that, or armor or whatever to protect this card. But maybe it finds a home in discard lists. We got MODOK, we got Hellcow, new Hellcow, discarding a bunch of stuff. You set it up with Wong. Maybe you got Swarms in the hand. You discard a bunch of Swarms over and over and over again, buffing your MIEK. Could be a lot of fun. Could also just not be that exciting and not worth picking up, because all these cards, as far as I know, are datamined as Series 5. So this is a 6,000 1 cost card, very specific to discard lists. So it makes you wonder. The movement is kind of weird. I don't think there's going to be a discard movement hybrid anytime soon, but that would be pretty neat. Maybe tossing Craven, who knows? But there you go. That's Meek. Now let's get to the next one. Check it out. It's Beta Ray Bill. Finally joining Marvel Snap. I've seen a lot of people talk about this card, wanting this one to join Marvel Snap, a beloved character of the community. And he's coming in as a 4/5 on reveal shuffle Stormbreaker into your deck. I'll show you Stormbreaker in a second, but to quickly summarize, Stormbreaker, when played on reveal, double the power of Beta Ray Bill. So that makes him a 4/10. If you manage to drop it and play it. Now, does that sound familiar? It kind of sounds like, I don't know, Thor, right? Or maybe Dakin, or a hybrid of the two, but a little bit more expensive. So there's ups and downs, but man, I'm giving this guy 4. He's the one I'm giving 4 stars from this January batch, because anytime you got doubling in power, it just pops off, right? Like you're going to find a way to make this work. Let's be honest. And the 4 cost, yeah, that sucks, but you got Zabu out there, and it's just going to discount this card and you're going to be fine. A 3/5 good card, upside, toss in Jane Foster, get the Thor, the Mjolnir and the Stormbreaker, and then you play them on turn 6 with Hitmonkey and Wong and all this crazy shenanigans, and you have so much power. You've just exploded. So I love it. I love this card. I love the art. That's a pretty sweet variant right up there. I love that we're, kind of going deeper into this theme of Thor with Odin, maybe even clicking those on reveals, Jane Foster, having like this little mini set of cards that all kind of work together in a thematic. I think it's very fun, very cool. So I'm excited. This is my number one that I'm excited for. But let's check out Stormbreaker real quick. And here's Stormbreaker. And one thing you'll note that's a little bit different from Stormbreaker compared to Mjolnir is that Stormbreaker has 1 power. If you do, I don't know if that's really going to matter. Usually you want to destroy these things. You don't want them on the board necessarily, or you want to stack them with Wong or Odin or anything like that. But hey, you never know, that 1 power could make a big difference. It's a 0/1, not the worst. And you pull that out with Jane Foster for a crazy turn. That's a lot of fun. So I'm excited the most for Beta Ray Bill. Seems sick. Lots of on-reveal synergies. Yeah, that's my number one, but we got one more to show you. Let's get to it. The Grandmaster is joining Marvel Snap. So it's that Planet Hulk theme, right? With the tournament and all that stuff. And Grandmaster is a 2/0, 3-star card for me. On reveal, move one of your other on reveal cards here to the middle location. Its ability happens again. This sounds crazy, right? It sounds unreal. It sounds really good, but there's a few things that make me drop it down to 3 stars. The biggest thing for me is the RNG. This is random, essentially. If you have multiple on reveal cards on the board, it's going to select one of them, and then it's going to move it to the middle, which you might not even want it to do, or maybe you really do want it to do that, but I don't know. The movement just seems kind of randomly thrown in there. It's going to move there, and then its ability is going to trigger, which is great, right? That's really what we want to use Grandmaster for. I can't really think of any movement things that we want. Like, you want the card to move and have some. That's why I put in Miles Morales. Maybe that's cool. Black Panther goes from 4 power to 8, and then 8 to 16 with a Grandmaster combo. Maybe not too bad. Venom was another crazy one that Berryverse suggested, where you use Nimrod and Venom. So Nimrod's out there, you eat it up with Venom, you use Grandmaster to trigger Venom again, which is going to move to the middle location where another Nimrod is there, and it splits more Nimrods everywhere. That could get out of hand. That could be really fun. But when I look at this card, I think about Absorbing Man that's already in the game, Odin that's already in the game. There's just other cards that already activate on reveals a second time, and they do well. They definitely have their place. This one is cheaper. That is the upside of this card. And maybe there's a world where you run this in Mr. Negative list because it's a 0/2 that can trigger the on reveal of another card. But the problem with that one is you might trigger Mr. Negative again, because he's going to be on the field and he's an on reveal. So that you're rolling the dice there, which I don't love that necessarily. So this card's a little bit up and down, a little bit confusing, to be honest, because there's so many on reveals in the game. Maybe there's just some sneaky good synergies. Let me know in the comments below. That's why I gave him 3 stars. I'm like, there's just too much upside present with a 2/0 card of this caliber with this ability. But at the same time, there is RNG present, and the movement is just kind of clunky, kind of weird. What if the location's full? Will the on reveal trigger? I imagine it will. I'm 90% sure it will, but you never know. Is that a very specific condition that we have to meet? It's just kind of weird. I don't understand it. But anyways, let me know in the comments below. Now, I do have one more card before we get to the Spotlight Cash schedules that has been slightly changed and going to be coming out in only 2-3 weeks. Let's check it out. That's right. They nerfed ANNIHILUS. Who saw that coming? I mean, okay, let me tell you something about the history of covering this game, datamines and all that stuff. Whenever they nerf a card before it's released, it's probably really, really good because in their playtesting, they went, this is a problem, we need to nerf it. And traditionally, if that has happened to a card, then it's, a little bit too good when it's released, despite the nerf. The first one that comes to mind is Goliath. It used to be a 5/5. Then it was released and was broken as a 6/5 and has been nerfed to a 6/3. So sometimes these can be problem cards before they're even released. And we're changing ANNIHILUS from a 5/8 to a 5/7. Maybe I'm sleeping on this card. I play junk decks probably the most compared to any other archetype, and I will tell you that there's inconsistencies and it doesn't always work out. It's not always the best list. It's not top of the meta for a reason. And when I look at this is like a junk deck through and through, and there's only so many cards that I can think of that you'd actually want to smush or push to the other side. It does create some GG's on turn 5, right? Some game over scenarios essentially, because if you fill all the spots and your opponent doesn't have anywhere to play on turn 6, then they have lost the game because ANNIHILUS shoved over rocks, shoved over the hood, shoved over a ninja. You never know. Anything with negative power, hazmat, discounting a bunch of, or getting rid of power on your side of the board so that you smush it over with ANNIHILUS. Maybe that's why they nerfed it. They don't want to be too popular because it'd be too toxic. Sign me up. I'm going to pull the trigger on this card right away. You're speaking my language. I'm ready for ANNIHILUS despite the nerf. I don't even care. It doesn't really matter with a card with this ability that a power change. Maybe it does. Maybe we're all sleeping on ANNIHILUS. I don't know. I gave him 2 stars before, or maybe even 1 star. I don't know what I gave him before. Doesn't matter. I'm giving him 3 stars now. We're changing it. So there you go. ANNIHILUS has been slightly changed. And while we're at this, if anyone's still listening, Firestar. I talked about that card in the Datamines. I had no idea what that card did when I talked about it, clearly, because I thought it set its power to 3 and to the turn 5. It adds power. That card's crazy. That card's cracked. I'm going to talk about that when, the December season rolls over. But anyways, that's a different story for another day. Let's show you guys the Spotlight cash schedules. All right, so I'm going to start with the one that I think people are most interested in, all the new cards, the new information, and that is January. So here is January, and the very cool thing about the 2 schedules that I'm going to show you, the next one being December, is that they've clearly changed how they're releasing cards. So before it was a season pass card and then every week after was a new card. Now they've changed it so that there's a new card no matter what. Every single week there's a new card, even the first week of the brand new month, the brand new season, and the season pass card is just on top. So when a season starts, there's going to be a season pass card and another brand new card, 2 cards in 1 week, which is just wild. So for instance, in this season in January, SKAAR is going to be released because of the new season, but at the same time, CAIERA is going to be released. So it's 2 cards. That's pretty neat, but also very expensive. So we've just kind of increased the cost of having a full collection, and series drops are nowhere to be found. It's kind of driving me nuts. We seriously need them back. Look at all this Series 5 stuff. This is insane. We're getting to the point where this is just boiling over. They need to change that. They got to start bringing back series drops. I hope they do by the time these seasons actually roll out, and it'll help mitigate the feelings of this being too expensive. But regardless, this is just a little bit bonkers. But it's nice that we get new content. So there's ups and downs. And here's all the Spotlight caches. You got some big bads thrown in there with High Evolutionary, Galactus. You got Loki down here with Elsa, 2 season pass cards in the week of Grandmaster. And then you got ANNIHILUS right there, who's a November card, and he'll be returning in January, which is kind of neat. But for the most part, there's just a lot of cards that we've already seen. Those are the season pass variants that you can get. So that is January. Take a little screenshot if you want. Let's check out December real quick. And here's December. So kind of like I was telling you earlier, Sebastian Shaw and Blob are going to release at the same time. You can pick up Sebastian Shaw with the season pass, Blob with your tokens or your Spotlight caches. It's going to be a Series 5 card. All of these are Series 5 cards. That means that's 2 straight months of full Series 5 cards. So really, right now, Werewolf just got released. The only other Series 4 release that we know of is Martyr in November, until things change. Now, these are datamine information, right? From the abilities to the stat lines to the series that they're released to the variants that are in the Spotlight cache. This is all datamined, and it's just a preview from what we have discovered. They can change it at any given moment. So you take it with a grain of salt, but it's nice to know. I think this is the most important information that you can receive in Marvel Snap, because this game is expensive and you got to plan ahead for the cards that you like the most. That's why I try to do my best to get it out to you guys as soon as possible. That is going to do it for me. Happy Halloween, everybody. Thank you for hanging out, and I'll catch you guys next time.